So I'll jump in to talk about something that is, of course, a great opportunity for us as a state, and that's how do we invest for a strong recovery coming back from the pandemic. We know that this has had impact on every part of the schooling system, and we have an opportunity now with the passage of the CARES Act last year, and then following on that, there was the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, which we call the CARISA Act, which put in an additional significant pot of money for K-12 schools, and then just recently the American Rescue Plan Act, which just passed, which put in an even more significant amount of money for our schools. All told, it's about $1.5 billion for our state, which can be used over about the next 3 years to make sure that we have a really strong recovery from the pandemic. So as we go forward to the next slide, what one of the things that we need to do as we think about how do we use these funds and how do we make sure that they go for the greatest strategic impact is both what do we do at the state level and also what do our districts do with the funds that they get. The way the federal law is structured, about 90% of that money goes directly out to districts and charter schools based on the Title I formula. And it can be used for a wide variety of purposes, both operational in terms of responding to the pandemic and making sure that you have the right kinds of protection equipment, PPE, and safety systems in place, and also for your educational programming. So there's a lot of ways you can use it. It's very flexible by design, which is great. And so I would strongly encourage all of you, if you haven't already, to be in conversation with your local boards, your local districts about the ways in which they're using the money from each of those different acts and how that's going to be put forward through their own local decision-making process. Now, with the remaining 10%, the state actually has some discretion as to how that money gets used to support our charter schools and our school districts and our students in the return. And so far, with the ESSR stands for the Elementary and Secondary Schools Education Relief Fund. So basically, think of that as the vehicle by which all of these education dollars were funneled. And in the first two rounds, through the CARES Act and the CARISA Act, we were able to use that money to invest in some of the immediate needs to make sure our buildings were safe, that our staff was taken care of, and that we could prepare our environments to come back. So things like getting our students connected to the internet and getting digital devices out. We know that social and emotional learning was a huge need. So we were able to provide professional development resources, mini grants for SEL, indoor air quality. We enacted what we think are the most advanced indoor air quality standards in the country, and we were able to use the money there. Support for our special education students and staff, accelerated learning, sick leave retention pay, and then the data collection and reporting that goes along with getting these funds and monitoring the impact of the pandemic. So as we look forward to the next round, the ESSR 3 appropriation, which is again through ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, that's really going to allow the public education department to start investing in the programs and the systems that are really going to help us over the next several years, again, come back with a robust recovery and support our kids as they fully re-enter into the school buildings. So this is a substantial revenue source. Again, this part of the ESSR alone is about $1 billion for the state over the next 3 years. And as we move on to the next slide, what we're going to do is ask for your feedback on the priorities around some of that funding at the state level. Now, so far, we've had a number of different stakeholder feedback events, including regional meetings, meetings with our out-of-school time partners, meetings with other key stakeholder groups around the state. And from those meetings, you'll see on the slide here some of the things that we've heard that are, of course, of high interest. And that includes high dosage tutoring, making sure that we have summer and learning enrichment opportunities for students, after-school programs for students, helping to increase our family and community engagement efforts as our schools are getting back to normal, and supporting our schools and districts to make sure that our highest needs populations, our special education students, our English learners, our Native American students, who oftentimes have been hit hardest by the pandemic, have the kinds of supports that they need specific to their needs to be able to re-enter the buildings successfully and re-enter the in-person learning program successfully. So going on to the next slide, these are some of the big programs listed in there that we've started to begin the planning on, and in some cases the implementation on, to be able to provide those supports as we come back. And what we would like from you, and we have a survey that we're going to ask that you fill out, is to know what additional investments should the state be prioritizing with our federal funds. So if we go on to the next slide, we'll be putting this survey out. We're going to have some time for you to fill it out, and we're seeking community input on the plans for our American Rescue Plan Act funding and the supports that they provide. And this will all go as part of the submission that we're going to submit to the United States Department of Education with our plan for spending these funds early in June. So in addition to the survey that you'll fill out, we'll be keeping this open for through May 28th to be getting additional feedback that we can incorporate into our planning process.